Welcome to Brightened Mind Podcast. I'm your host, Vicky Parchimento. Here I'll be sharing you ways to brighten your mind and increase your inner joy and peace while living life beautifully within and emulating love to others and yourself. Brighten your mind to brighten your life and brighten your world. Welcome to episode 7 of Brightened Mind Podcast. Today we're going to be listening on an interview that was done by my friend James on his Wellness What podcast. And we're going to be discussing light versus darkness. You can find James on Instagram at James_A_TEE and also www.james-trong.com. So let's go ahead and listen to this interview regarding light versus darkness.
Welcome back to the Wellness What podcast. And joining us live with Vicky from Brightened Mind, or at Brightened Mind. Oh, look, hey, someone's online. So, where did we meet? That's a good question. We met at...
it was, how many years ago? Was that 2012?
Yeah, probably.
In Texas, I believe. Or no, not Texas. Maybe Las Vegas.
Nah, I wasn't at the Las Vegas one.
No, not okay, then it must have been...
Were you at Nashville? Nashville?
Oh, Nashville.
Nashville,
yes.
Nashville.
Nashville 2012, yes.
2012 in
Wow,
Nashville.
Has it been?
That was a good year, actually.
Yeah, that was a really good year. A lot of changes, a lot of shifts, so... It was good. I remember seeing you guys were motivated people coming all the way from Australia. I remember you telling me you'd come to when you arrived in Nashville, it was like a 17-hour flight.
Yeah.
And you guys arrived a couple hours before, and you guys were all pumped in energy. So I was very inspired by that.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a flight from somewhere from Canada, somewhere in the States, then to Nashville. So you guys came really far.
Yeah, it was good. And this was back in the day when we were going through like the seminar circuits and stuff, and going to like a lot of the personal development things. So
like clubs and so
all that fun stuff.
It's a good thing. You get to meet. That's the thing with like success clubs or like networking. You get to meet people, build those relationships, and how many years later? It's already 8 years later.
Yeah.
Like you're in Australia, I'm Canada, so we're still in connection.
Still have that connection. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's cool. We still got some memories as well, which is really cool.
Yeah, a lot of cool memories. I remember always just seeing you guys at events, and it was really good.
Yeah.
Really happy to see you guys, actually, because you guys were the Australians.
Yeah. So, Vicky, why don't you tell people, like, what you're about and, a bit about your background and where you're from and just about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So, my background, my background's more on like with schooling or just in general?
Just in general, like, what got you into personal development?
Did more of the, finished schooling on IT and it was very interesting. But during that corporate ladder, journey, I felt like something was missing. And that's when I looked into like personal development at age 20. And I remember I mentioned this to you, James. It was the first book that got me was Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah, I remember.
And it's quite interesting. Just how that's I don't know, just how it can change your mind. Like coming from finishing school and reading that book, that's one of the big books you can read like coming out of school or even during school can change your mind. So
what was your biggest takeaway
from there?
What was your biggest takeaway from the book that at that moment in time?
Well, the biggest takeaway, that's a good one. The biggest takeaway was that your money can work for you rather than you have to work so hard for the rest of your life. So, and your money can work for you through like suggestions he gives, like starting a business, like investing, real estate. So, and then from there, I did take some concepts from the book and, learned how to earn more money than what people were earning in my job. Because I was not, being a junior, I wasn't earning as much as the higher paid individual. So it's pretty cool. Like learning that knowledge, like James, like that knowledge that I learned from that $20 book and then ending up having to go to a $500 course. Yeah. I paid in like multiples. So that's why I say knowledge is power. It's amazing. And from there, I just really loved like the personal development side of things. And I just want to share the knowledge that I've learned since, for how many years now? It's almost been 16 plus years. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Quite interesting how you come about this stuff. So.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And we were saying like yesterday, like how not every single person is like the be all and end all. Like no one's like one guru that covers everything. Like every single person is different, and they have their own journey and they have their own kind of like perspective that they can share. What's something that you want to kind of like bring forth for people that you want to reach in terms of your audience, and what kind of impact do you want to make? Just a big picture kind of idea.
Yeah, that's a really good question, James. That's a really good one. Very deep.
Yeah.
The one thing that I definitely want is to, earlier, a few years ago, I learned about the concept about your mind being more like you can get into darkness versus the light.
Yeah.
And, it stuck with me. And then I mentioned to you before, 3 years ago, I was in a bookstore that had over 10,000 books in Asia. Yeah. And the one small book, it was like this small, that really caught my eye was the book called The Brightened Mind. And it was only about 50 pages, but it was it brought me into thinking like, wow, like if people just learned how to brighten their mind, they can brighten their life and they can brighten their world. So not only that, but you brighten the people around you through you changing yourself. I really believe that it does start in your mind, because there are certain things that your mind is just so powerful. Like it just amazes me. That's the one thing. If I can help people like brighten their minds one person at a time, eventually it can go they can positive 10 people who can probably impact 100-fold, and then going. So just that concept of really like your mind for success. So and just brightening it and just lightening it up and just removing the dark residue that you might have picked up growing up. So, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. And like, where does this dark residue stuff come from? Because like, obviously, like with the content and stuff like that we're both putting out, I mean, you put out a lot of stuff on your @Brightened like Instagram page and some of your personal stuff as well. But where do you think a lot of this negativity comes from? I mean, is it just inherent with who we are as people, or like is it taught to us? Like, what do you think? Yeah,
that's a good question. Yeah, so from what I understand, like the studies that like I've learned and just like the different mindsets, I thought it only came from parents. Because they're the ones who program you, who not program you, but I mean, they're the ones who teach you certain things, teach you certain beliefs.
Yeah.
They say that from age 1 to 5, it's very impactful what you say to a child, or how you treat the child, or what you say for them to believe. Like that's almost like 65% of what they'll take in their life.
Oh, really?
And up to the age 18, like it's interesting that study, and up to age 18 hold almost over 250,000 times, and by the time you're 18 as well, you're told yes around 2,000 times. So you're always in the negative, you're never in the affirmative growing up. So I thought it was just about parents, so that's one thing. But another thing is also you're also energetically connected to people around you, and also what they call the collective consciousness in the world. Whatever thought someone brings out, it actually goes into your mind as well. And that's why it's so important to associate with like-minded people, because their energy you actually pick up, and the thoughts they have energetically picks up in your mind as well. So that's pretty interesting. It's not just your parents, it's your environment, you're around your friends. Yeah, just even you. Oh, another thing, James, is what you read and what you listen to and what watch on the internet or anything. Even movies that scare you, it actually impacts. It actually has an effect on your body, what you're programming into your mind as well. So it's pretty interesting.
Because it's really when you're watching like a scary movie or like something that's a thriller or something that's suspenseful, you actually get into that especially if the movie's like really good, you really get into it, right? And then you can physically feel the fear when you're in that moment. So your mind can't really tell the difference between what it's watching and like, you know, the experience that it's feeling. Like, seems to have a huge impact on
Very true. Oh yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Esther Hicks would say, she's the author of an amazing book, Ask It Is Given.
Good book.
She would say, why would you co-create your future by watching something that scares you? Well, it depends on the person, because some people, I have some friends who like love scary movies and it makes them happy.
Okay.
Yeah, they get the shock. But the individual who really, it makes them feel bad inside, her quote was saying, you're co-creating your future. You're creating more of that fear in the future. So it's quite interesting how just those feelings that you get. Like I can give an example. Yesterday we were watching like an action movie and I was feeling that suspense and I was like, oh my gosh, like it's crazy how it can impact and make your feelings, really impact your feelings that actually impact your thoughts. So it's really, really important to
watch what you
be mindful.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Be mindful of what you watch.
Yeah, it's a really big thing, mindfulness. So
and we don't really get taught that much, really. Like, you know, just like growing up and stuff like that. And I think like normal people, like from where we come from, you know, our parents don't really think about that stuff that much. I'm not sure about you, but like, yeah, they don't really get that kind of advice when I was a kid.
No, I never did. But the one thing that my mom told me growing up, and I never believed her, was stop hanging around those bad influences. You're going to turn out just like them. Yeah. And I remember that in grade 8, and I'm like, I don't believe in that. And then I ended up being kind of following the negative influences. And yeah, it's true. So that was one of, and the one thing my mom. She would always say, whatever you put to your mind, work hard, you can get it. So I did get that kind of influence growing up. She was tough, but it's the one thing I always remember, whatever you put to your mind, you can get it. Because my mom she was there's a family of 10. She was one of the only ones who didn't get an education. Yeah. I think she just got high school and ended up doing some college courses in Calgary. And she ended up being one of the most successful.
Oh, that's cool.
Because she worked hard.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting. There's no excuses. Like there's so many excuses you put in your mind.
Yeah, it actually got me thinking about like, cause you know, like my parents, they came from the war. Like they grew up in Vietnam, and around that time when the Vietnam War kind of broke out. And something that I've been finding out recently in terms of, you know, after going through a lot of the events and doing a lot of like internal work and stuff like that, was that a lot of the patterns and beliefs that got taught to me when I was a kid were actually stemming from the things that they created from the traumas of the war. And I didn't realize that was actually a thing. Like, it was like, why do they keep telling me this? Like, where does this belief come from? It was like, you know, there's certain things that they would say that just doesn't make sense in today's contemporary society. And it's like, where does that even come from? And then I think back, it's like, oh, they came from this place. And in that place, food was scarce, or like, you know, you didn't have that much freedom to go and do what you want to do. You couldn't just walk out the door and be safe. So they had to create certain patterns that kept them safe during that time. And they kept that. And then those things inherently passed down, or they were taught to us when we were growing up. But I don't think they realized that that's what they were doing. That was just stuff that they created, which is really, really interesting. Like, to see not just where your patterns come from, but where does the belief system that the people who are teaching, where does that belief system come from, and where did that stem from? Like, I don't know if you have a similar experience.
Yeah, like, I don't have, like, my parents are, luckily they came to Canada on their own, but my girlfriend's parents, they went through the same thing. They're Laotian. Yeah. And they had to stop what they're doing and immediately go to Thailand to escape from the communism and that war, the Vietnam War that was being influenced into the country. And, you know, I see she mentions it too, like they have the mentality of scarcity, the hoarding. And, you know, she would try to give advice, but then she realized, I can't give them advice. I mean, this is what I can't help them. I can't change their ways. This is just how they were influenced by, and basically all those terror and that feeling that they got when they were refugees and coming to Canada. So it's so true, James. It's so true. Yeah, because I do see some of those influences in her, because that's just what she was told growing up. But it's so interesting, like how impactful that can be. Just one event, how it can pass down to generations and generations. And that's why I mentioned the other day, you have to do that energetic clearing.
Yeah.
You know, there's a clearing technique. It's called the Motion Code by Dr. Brad Nelson. And he actually does the clearing that his technique does. It clears inherited past emotions that you inherited from your family. So it's quite interesting. Like, there are a lot of emotions that you can clear from what you're passed down. And it's just amazing stuff. So it's always good to remove those emotions. Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. Because that brings on to a topic that we wanted to talk about, which was the idea of like light versus dark, which I mentioned I saw one of your things that you posted up on Instagram, the thing with the Star Wars, where it was like there's this idea of this energetic thing of like there being a kind of like a light side where things are positive and good, and there's a force for darkness, which is, you know, like the Sith and Darth Vader and all that kind of stuff. And there's very distinct differences between the two, but we as people, we get influenced by either one or the other. You want to elaborate more on that?
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, we mentioned the Star Wars movie, and what my mentors told me before is that those movies, they are seeds. They're planting seeds to people, the masses, that there is such thing as a dark side and light side. And another thing I was told is that when you don't know about the dark side versus light side, and if you don't even know about the dark side, it's kind of like not mentioned about dark side and light side. So the dark side is being like motivated by like pain. Like, you know, if you think of the movie Star Wars, Darth Vader, he was motivated by pain because he was afraid that his wife would pass away. But he used that anger to motivate him. Compared to the light side, think of a Jedi, you're using peace and love to motivate you. Being motivated on the dark side, yes, you can get a lot. You can get all the fancy material things you want. You can get everything you want in life. You can get even more and more and more. But if you keep filling your life with the material things to make yourself happy, that's more of like dark side-ish.
Yeah.
You have to be the one who wins. You're motivated by anger. You want everyone to lose, and you only be the only one to be the only one
to be
want to win in life. The light side is like you want others to win. You genuinely love other people, and you genuinely are happy as a person, no matter if you're living in a mansion or if you're living in an apartment. You are a genuinely happy person. Now, I'm not saying like the light side, you can't get those material things. Yes, you can, and you can be happy, but you won't get as much as if you were on the as if you're on the dark side. So the dark side is faster, light side is more lighter. And it's interesting because I remember you mentioned, James, when you were in sales, like you had those dark side kind of manifestation feelings. You saw those people, you had other people, you can share that story, the people were earning and you
they're doing the...
but you saw what they were doing.
Yeah,
right?
It's very common in because I come from a sales background. It's very common in like actually I came from like door to door, so like knocking on people's doors like every day. Very, very grind work. Trying to talk to people that don't want to talk to you, and you try to sell them something on the spot. So it is very fine. There is a very fine line between doing like sales tactics and getting into more unethical stuff, as opposed to, you know, wanting the best for the customer because you're on commission only, and that your result or your sales result is directly impacting your ability to eat food or like, you know, sustain yourself by getting a paycheck and stuff like that. So people did lean more towards doing dodgy stuff, unethical things, and there was always that inner conflict of like, okay, do I do this and get the money, or do I do this and be nice to the person and like try not to sell them something they obviously can't afford? Like, there was that internal conflict of like, I could just say that and they would probably buy it, but I know internally they probably can't afford it. Like, so that means that in the short term I could get money, but then I also know inherently that's probably not the right thing to do. But I know a lot of the people, they would just go, oh, it doesn't matter. Like, you know, my job is to make sales, so I'm just going to do that anyway. It's very easy to just go in that way, to justify why doing something is okay, I guess. But it's interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's what you're talking about is like one comes from a place of lack, is motivated from almost like a fear of loss, and the other one comes from a place of being abundant and knowing that there's more than enough to go around, and that no matter what other people do, like, they're not taking away from your own ability to create your life and get what you want to get. And it just seems like there's those two spaces, or those two energies are very, very distinct in that way. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, it's true. And I mentioned the other day, it's like, that book, How to Be Rich by J.P. Getty. I mean, that's dark side there. Yeah. And also, like, there are good nuggets of gold, but if you really read into it, there are some. And especially that movie, All the Money in the World, like, that guy was manifesting on the dark side. He didn't care about family. Like, that's the one thing I mentioned too, is that many of these highly billionaire successful people on their deathbed were quoted, like one of them specifically was quoted, what do you want more? Like, what have you been done if you, like, before you passed in your life, like, what would it be? And then the one thing he said is, like, I just want more money. Yeah. It wasn't more love, wasn't more happiness, it wasn't more joy. I just want more money, just to say that they had the most money in the world. So that's definitely dark side. I mean, you're not being that, like, that, you're not having that inner peace that you were there, like, to have and experience in the world. Yeah, it's just very interesting, these dark and light side manifestations. And it's interesting how you mentioned, like, people, they just, when you're in sales, like, people will do anything. They'll say those dodgy things.
Yeah,
and all right, and then kids, if they it's the same thing. Not knowing about the light and dark side is about, mentioned earlier, is when kids don't know about the bad things about drugs, the disadvantages. It's the same thing as kids not knowing about the dark side versus light, or growing up not knowing about it. I mean, James, if you knew about the light side and dark side growing up, I'm sure you'd be in that sales position and be like, that's like dark side manifestation. I'm going to go this way. I'm going to see what best I can do for the client, what's their best interest, because I know deep down, if they do good, I'll do good as well. So isn't that interesting? It's so cool.
yeah, it is. I mean, like, I guess you're right. Like, you don't really get taught this stuff. You don't really get taught. I think we intuitively have a feeling as to, you know, that's right. We intuitively have a feeling as to what's right and what's wrong. And, you know, like, right and wrong is too extreme of words to use. It's more like what's more beneficial for us and what's less than beneficial for us. We kind of have a sense as, if I do this, then this, we have a feeling that this is probably not the best thing for us. Yeah, so we don't really get told or taught this, like, early on, but we have that intuitive sense that, okay, if I do this, this may be beneficial.
Yeah.
And if we do the other way, it might not be beneficial. But then society and our friends and our family and all the stuff that is in the physical world tell us, no, that's okay, you should just do that. Like, their programming, or like their belief system, or just how we operate in, I guess, society in general, kind of overrides our intuition in that sense, as to what we feel might be the right thing to do.
Yeah, agree. It's interesting, because we've been told, like, growing up, you're told about bad and good, but you're never told about what you eventually get to when you get to bad or good. I mean, like, someone can just keep focusing on and doing, like, the bad in life, and you know, things look like they work out, but eventually, I think ultimately they're not happy. So and they're not. That's the key with, like, the one thing I want to, like, maybe broadcast, like, with, like, Brightened Mind, is like having that inner peace, because that inner peace is number one. That's the number one that matters in the, like, at the end of your life. It's like having, like, that source energy and you and being genuinely happy and being genuinely at peace with where you are in life. It's a different mind than wanting to always want more and more and more in order to fill that void, when that void will never be filled.
What do you think causes someone to want more and more? Like, what's that what's another way to say it? What do you think causes someone to have that insatiable desire to have more but never have it fulfilled?
I feel like the thing that would cause it is wanting. I feel like it would definitely come from the dark side manifestation, and you feel like it's because you're not in alignment. Like when you feel like you always want more and more. Like I've been there. Like a few years ago, that like I feel like I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna be more happy. If I get this, I'll be more happy. But every time you got that thing, whatever, maybe material thing or whatever you wanted in life, and then that happiness lasted for it didn't even last long.
Yeah.
Then you knew deep down, like that's when you feel like, okay, I gotta keep going. It's like a vicious circle.
Yeah.
Like you just want more and more. That's when you have to come to the point in your life where you're like, wait, there's something that's missing.
Yeah.
Like if you keep filling that void and you feel like something's missing, like that's when you know that if you're self-aware enough to know, that's when you know that you're not in alignment and you're not at peace. And the number one way to know that you are at peace is that when you feel good now, like you have that following like your emotions, like when you get that thing, you feel happy, but deep down inside, like your intuition.
Yeah.
Deep down inside, you can feel in your intuition, it doesn't feel right, but in your mind, you're like, this feels good. So that's another thing too, is like we mentioned earlier, like the other time we were speaking, is that your intuition is that will never steer you wrong. And that's why I said like that I've heard that this time it's the intuition age, like it's moving on from the information age. And that's a really good question, because it's very true about
a lot of things, like
a lot of things.
Yeah, like I have a lot of people that I know.
Like earlier when you were doing your scales, like you had that intuition, that gut feeling, right? You have to follow that gut feeling, and you have to work on your intuition. Like growing, like as when you're born, you're born with intuition, but like when it starts to depreciate and decompress, the older you get. But the more you get back to that and follow your intuition, really, really your gut feeling, then that's when things will work out.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, because I know like a lot of people that fall into that space of like they just want more, like, and not in like a really good way. It's like it's kind of like almost like a toxic way, where like, okay, I achieve this thing, and then when I get there, there's more. Like it's never enough to fulfill that need. For what they're really looking for is just, I guess, like inner peace in a sense. They're looking.
Yeah, they just want inner peace.
Yeah, but they've externalized, for some reason they've externalized the feeling onto something else. They're like, okay, I need to achieve this first for myself to allow myself to feel inner peace, where you don't really need to set up that rule. You can just feel inner peace right now if you really wanted to, right? But for some reason they've set it up that way, and especially when you've given up your responsibility to something that's not yourself, whether it's to an object or something happening or another person in a relationship, for example, then I think that leads to that type of, I guess, negative behavior, or that negative type of energy where you're always needing stuff.
Yeah, I think also too, like we do live in a society where, we're being advertised to like certain things, like if you get it, you'll be happy.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like, because I've seen other countries where, like you go to like another country that is not as maybe developed, but you could see their citizens are happy. Yeah. Because they know that if they're just fed and they're breathing and they're alive, like that gives them inner peace. Yeah. Right. Compared to, I guess our society's more like your country, we're more, I guess it's more cushiony. Like we materialistic driven. You got to get that new thing. You got to get that new car. You got to get that new house. You got to just like show up. But then you want more, and that's more the dark side manifestation. It's just you're not content. And it's that's the reason why, like, I know different teachings with different like mindsets, that's what they call like enlightenment, you know. You want to get to that enlightenment because that's where you're 100% like at inner peace. And you know that no matter what happens to you, whether you know the weather's bad, you know, things with work, job, anything, like even with pandemics, as long as you're inner balance and you're at inner peace, like things will always work out. And most people just don't get to that. You know, they just always want more. And that's what I want to teach with Brightened Mind is like, you can be happy like where you're at right now. You just, it all starts with your mind, like all your perspective.
What do you think? What do you think, Vicky, that stops someone from who's in that space, that stops them from continuing down that path? Because, like, obviously, like we've been there before, where you're just really competitive and like you just only solely focused on materialistic stuff and all that kind of stuff. But it feels like when you're there in that moment where you're at that point where you have a choice as to go further into that or to let go of that and then go into something that's more compassionate and positive. What do you think is the biggest challenge that someone has when they're at that moment and they're tossing up between the two directions to go?
Like at the moment of going from dark side to light side?
Yeah, like this is kind of at a point. Like they know that, okay, if I continue down this road, like this is going to be bad, but, you know, like what do I do? Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's the one thing I learned that is it's addiction. Like you're just addicted. Like there's the one quote I heard is like, once you go first class, from coach to first class, it'll be very hard if you ever had to go to first class to coach. Like you just, you'll do anything. Yeah. Like I've listened to like an audio of an individual who went dark side, and he was saying that he would back then it was like traveler's checks. He would have fake traveler's checks because he lost money, and he would not fly coach. Like he would not, because like he's like first class. So he would fake that just to get that first class flight. Like that's dark side. I mean, like that's like addiction. I mean, it's like once you get there, you just like want more and more because like it's the status and all that, and you're feeding your mind and you're just feeding yourself with all these things because you think it feels good, but deep down your gut feeling it's not right. And that's the path of that dark side, is like you just want to keep going because you get all those things. Like it's someone who's addicted, like someone addicted to drugs. You just want more and more and more. Like you'll do anything, you'll even break the law. So that's the path of that route. And I mentioned a story the other day, just like how, you know, I know someone who knew somebody who was going that dark route where like their eyes, you can see like they're doing certain things in their business just to get money, or in their company just to get money. You can see like the black lines under their eyes, like they were going dark side. You can tell because they just wanted more. They wanted that nice house, they wanted that car, anything to do, even if it wasn't the best interest of the client. So if you can stop yourself and realize that it can be hard. It is definitely hard. I guess once that person comes to, I guess just like a realization that this is wrong, like they can eventually go that route. And we can go back to that analogy of Star Wars. Like Darth Vader eventually had like a realization that he's like, wow, this is wrong. Like he eventually went light side, but he had to go down that dark path to realize it. So, that's the one thing. It's, I know it's a good question, because when I do these studies about dark side and light side manifestation, it seems like once you're in the dark side, like, and you keep going deeper and deeper, those stories, like, they don't go back.
Yeah. That's interesting. Would you say, like, I think a big part is the willingness to let go of the stuff. Like, I think, it seems like that when you're at that fork, like, it's very important to be okay with, if I lose everything, then that's fine. and just, if you can bring yourself to that point, like where if I lose all the stuff that I have and go back to zero, and I'll be okay. Like if you can bring yourself to that point mentally, then that kind of shifts that in a sense, because then you start to unwind the addiction towards the other thing, right? Like, I don't know, like that's just what I'm thinking. Because that's what I thought.
No, that's good. Like,
yeah. Because that's what I thought about the sales
so
thing. Yeah.
the one thing I mentioned, that if you're willing to lose the material things, like if like yes, you can manifest all the material things you want on the light side, like I mentioned, but you definitely won't. But as on the light side, you're actually willing to let those things go, because you know deep down inside things that are going to give you inner peace and happiness. That's why when you're on the dark side, you just want to hold on to the stuff. You just want to hold on to it because you know, like, this is the stuff that makes me happy. The moment it's gone, this stuff, it won't make me. It's external factors that's keeping you.
Because they've externalized the permission of their feeling onto that, right?
So yeah, that's a good point.
That's cool. So why do you think it's important to have like a positive mindset, especially during these times?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, definitely during the pandemic, you should have definitely a positive mindset, because, and when I say positive mindset, not just positive thinking, because positive thinking is it's just imagine that just being positive and know deep downside you're not feeling the best. That's like, that's artificial positive thinking. But when I mean like an actual positive mindset is that you actually feel good. And the reason why you got to have a positive mindset during this kind of pandemic is because, like, everyone in the world, we're all connected energetically through the mind, through this collective consciousness. And we're actually literally picking up thoughts from other people.
Yeah.
Like, if I can send a thought to, it's just, our brains are just powerful. If I send a thought to someone, like, powerful, like someone I know in India, they'll get that thought within seconds. Like, that's just amazing how the mind works. And the moment that you focus on, like, being the best person and on your well-being during this time, you're actually positively impacting the world, because the best version of yourself can actually help people in the world. And I mentioned before is that when that one person has that positive mindset, like genuinely, you positively impact indirectly over 250,000 people. And it just trickles after that. So the more of us that think this way, like you, James, like myself, the more better it will be for the world. And that's more on an energetic sense and well-being. And when you're more calm and more peaceful, you're less susceptible to getting stress and sicknesses and things like that, because your mind's so powerful. And that's why, like, when even just to help prevent, just to help yourself with, your well-being, that's number one, is your mindset. It's just amazing how your mind works. So that's why I find it so powerful to use it. And just make sure that you have that well-being. It's all just over with your mind. And the one thing you can do is during the pandemic is really just cut down on the news. Like, you don't have to be inundated. Just be informed.
Definitely. Makes a lot of sense. I remember you mentioned the
I mean.
Yep.
I remember when the pandemic first started, like I was falling into that. I was watching the news, and I felt myself within the second week, James. I felt I was feeling like low. I didn't feel the best. And the moment I switched from changing all that news, listening to it, to focusing on myself and well-being, like, things just worked out. And I even shared that with people. Yeah. Like, on my IG, I had a short video on that, and I noticed it helped positively impact a lot of other people messaging me saying, thanks so much for sharing that. It's just because that one thing, if you just change during the pandemic, just cut down the news.
It's good. Good words of advice. Oh, I think it cut out a bit. Oh, wait. Here we go. We're back. Yeah, and I think you mentioned the other day, Vicky, was that changing yourself and changing your own mindset, it was a lot easier for other people around you to to almost like observe and see how you handle different situations. Just being around a positive person, and that subconsciously influence them, which then could get them to make certain decisions and shifts in their own mindset, and get them to question, like, okay, am I really approaching this situation properly? You know, could I have handled this a little bit better? And just those tiny little like ideas or those tiny little thoughts really made a big impact in how they then, you know, changed their behavior over time, and then how other people in their circle started to observe them. And yeah, I thought that was really cool what you said last time we talked.
Yeah, that's a good one too. Like when you, like, even when I mentioned about you James, like when you post that positive video,
yeah,
like if people, even just 10 people positively get impacted by that, and those 10 people each get 10 people who get 10 people, it's a trickle effect. I mean, you posting that one thing and just sharing that, you are like helping, even though it doesn't show like that of certain people, but you could potentially be positively impacting millions of people just by even people sharing it, and then being shared, and then remembering that. And that's why I was thinking, like, even myself, when with like an old coworker, like I noticed her when she started spending time with me more. Her mindset started changing. I started just planting seeds every day, James. I just started to look for the gold. She's like, "What do you mean? I don't believe in that." I kid you not. 1 month later, we were talking, and she's like, "Vicky, why aren't you looking for the gold?" So, and she still uses that concept now, even though we don't work together. Another concept she uses is the word cancel. Like, you know, yourself with our training is that, you know, whenever a negative thought comes in, negative feeling, the words cancel, saying it after another, it energetically clears it from your mind. So she started using that as well, and she started sharing it with people she works with. So it's just amazing that one person that you can impact can potentially impact hundreds, thousands of millions. It's quite amazing.
Wild, right? Yeah. That's really cool. Huh. Yeah, what are some things that you're working on now, Vicky? Like, I know you got your Brightened Mind IG. Like, what's your major intent for that?
Yeah, so right now I'm just working on my free course on Brightened Mind, just because I had a lot of people messaging me asking me to like consider like a course, and I and I even got some feedback, and people were interested. So starting on that, just like a basic course in just mindset. I'm also going to be thinking of like YouTube.
Okay,
But right now I'm really just working with my audience. Any mindset, especially during this time, because that's why I felt like I really got to push that mindset because of like the pandemic, like, and seeing people being disempowered.
Definitely.
I want to share as much as I could on the knowledge that I know. So that's the best I want to do, is just help my audience, and just not just my audience, but just people just around me. Anything I can do to help with the mindset, especially.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Hey, so there was this one thing that we brought up last time, was this idea of the information age, and how some of the courses now, from I guess the time that we met, back then, the courses were part of the model or the structure that was created was basically people have a free course or a free seminar and stuff, and they get upsold to more and more deeper information. And that was a model that worked in the information age. And we're moving more into what's called the intuition age, which is what you said, or what you mentioned last time. What are your thoughts on that, and how things are going with that in terms of what people should be focusing on, and maybe just some ideas around that?
Yeah, definitely people, I'm sure you feel there's a shift going on right now. And the shift that they're saying is from information age to intuition age. And I remember you mentioned, James, you're like, wow, really? Information age just got here?
Yeah.
So that's how fast the world's moving and changing. And, I've heard that other days, like, the world does want change. And that's why we're moving quickly into this intuition age, people are starting to pick up on this stuff, James. Like, there's so many more people I know who are, like we mentioned before, is like, who are accepting personal development stuff. Before, people are like, oh, what's that? Now it's everywhere. There's more YouTube videos, there's more IG pages, there's way more than there were, I'd say, 10 to 20 years ago. So it's just completely amazing. And people are starting to pick up, it's great to see. People are starting to pick up.
Definitely.
Like, their gut feel when they see certain things on the news or anything, they question, they're like, is this right?
Yeah.
Because I know before, years ago, people would be like, oh, this is what was said, blah, blah. But now people are coming to me and said, do you think that's true? I don't know if it is. So it's cool.
Yeah.
Like, you can even see it from, I'm sure you can also see with your friends or family. Even my friends or family, I'm even noticing that they're even questioning things. Before, they would never, James. They'd be like, oh, this is just how it is. But now when I see them questioning, they're starting to follow their intuition.
Yeah.
It's awesome to see.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Brighten Mind Podcast. Please subscribe and listen to more ways to brighten your mind.